The desert was still that morning, the kind of stillness that made a man believe the world had stopped breathing. Ethan McGraw rode the ridge line above his pasture, the first gold of dawn breaking over the mesas. The air was sharp with dust and sage, and the only sound was the slow creak of his saddle. He'd lived on this land 10 years, long enough to know that silence often a danger. His cattle were scattered below, dark shapes against the pale scrub. One steer raised his head, ears twitching, and bolted without reason. Ethan froze in the saddle. His hand slid to the rifle slung across his lap. He caught movement near the rocks, a shadow shifting low, fast, deliberate. Rustlers. Had to be. He raised the rifle. His breath steadied, finger brushing the trigger. A man didn't hesitate on the frontier. Hesitation buried you quick. The rifle cracked, sharp as lightning in the morning hush. The echo rolled off the canyon walls. A cry followed, a high, ragged scream that split the stillness in two. Not a grown man's cry. Something younger. Ethan's stomach clenched. He spurred his horse down the slope, dust spraying beneath the hooves. The shape lay crumpled by a mesquite bush, one leg twisted awkwardly, dark hair spread in the dirt. A boy, no older than 15. Apache, blood spread fast across the boy's buckskin shirt, staining it black. His hand clutched his side, eyes wide with fear and pain. Ethan dropped from the saddle, rifle in hand, heart hammering against his ribs. God Almighty, he whispered. He hadn't shot a rustler. He'd shot a child. Behind him, his two ranch hands thundered down the ridge. Tate, a wiry man with a whiskey voice, spat as soon as he saw. Damn Apache. Should have finished him proper. The other, Billings, raised his revolver. We'll save the tribe the trouble. Put him down clean. Ethan's hand shot out, knocking the revolver aside. Lower it. Billings glared. You lost your senses? You know what happens when they find one of their shot on your land. Ethan's eyes stayed locked on the boy's face. He saw not an enemy, but a child bleeding into the dust. His mind betrayed him with another face, younger still, his own son, Jacob, gone 6 winters now to fever. The memory clawed at him. He's not dying here, Ethan said, voice hard. Not while I've breath in me. He stripped off his neckerchief, pressed it against the wound. The boy gasped, eyes rolling back. Ethan hoisted him up, the weight slight but heavy with blood. Tate cursed. Billings spat again. But Ethan mounted with the boy cradled across his arms and turned for home. Every hoofbeat pounded the same thought into him. One mistake, one bullet, could cost him more than his life. It could bring a war to his door. The ride back stretched like an eternity. The boy's blood soaked through Ethan's shirt, sticky and hot. Coyotes yipped in the distance, their cries a funeral song. Ethan pushed his horse harder, the ranch house rising like salvation against the horizon. They barreled into the yard. Ethan swung down, shouting for water, for rags. The ranch hands followed reluctantly, muttering under their breath about the foolishness of saving a wounded Apache. Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke and leather. Ethan laid the boy on the table, tore his shirt open. The wound was ugly, a deep groove across the ribs where the bullet had grazed but not buried itself. Luck or providence. Still, blood poured like a spring. Ethan poured whiskey over it. The boy arched, a hoarse cry torn from him. Ethan pressed cloth against the wound, whispering without meaning to. Stay. You just stay. Tate lingered in the doorway, arms crossed. Ain't no sense. You're patching him up just to watch as people gut us by nightfall. Ethan didn't look up. Give me more rags. Billings shook his head. You're gambling with all our hides, McGraw. That boy's kin will burn this place down for what you done. Then let him come. Ethan snapped. His voice startled even him. He looked down again, meeting the boy's eyes. They were dark, full of pain and defiance both. The boy muttered something in Apache, weak and halting. Ethan didn't know the words, but felt their weight just the same. The hours crawled. Ethan cleaned and bound the wound, held the boy steady through fever and shivering. He worked with the steadiness of a man shoeing a horse or fixing a fence. Except this was no fence, no horse. This was life itself, trembling beneath his hands. When at last the boy slept, Ethan stepped outside, sweat streaking his face. The night had fallen heavy, the desert stretching wide and endless. He saw lights on the distant ridges, smoke trails, small fires, signals. Tate followed his gaze. They know. They're coming. Ethan's jaw clenched. Then I'll face 'em. Billings barked a laugh, bitter and sharp. You think Mercy buys anything out here? That boy ain't your son. The words hit like a lash. Ethan turned, fist tight, but said nothing. He walked back inside, where the boy lay breathing shallow. Midnight pressed thick around the ranch. The coyotes had gone silent. Ethan sat by the boy, oil lamp throwing shadows across the room. He wiped sweat from the boy's brow, listened to the rasp of his breath. Outside, the desert was alive with whispers he could not see. The boy stirred, lips parting. He whispered a word, pointing weakly toward the mountains. Ethan leaned close. The word came again, low, urgent. A name, maybe, or a warning. Then Ethan heard it, faint at first, carried on the wind. The beat of drums. Slow, steady, growing louder. He rose, crossed a window. Shadows moved on the ridges. Figures on horseback, torches burning like fireflies in the night. The Apache were out there, watching, waiting. Tate and Billings stumbled in, guns at the ready. They're here, Tate hissed. We're finished. Ethan gripped his rifle, but his gaze returned to the boy on the table. His chest rose and fell, fragile as candlelight. Ethan knew he had no choices left that wouldn't cost him. He could hand the boy over, maybe save his own skin. Or he could stand, protect him, and invite the tribe's wrath upon them all. He thought of Jacob again, small hands gripping a toy horse, eyes bright before fever stole him. Ethan had failed his own son once. He would not fail another. The drums thundered now, echoing off the canyon walls, beating like the heart of the desert itself. Ethan stood in the lamplight, rifle heavy in his hands, torn between war and mercy. The boy whispered once more, voice breaking, pointing toward the mountains where the torches burned. And Ethan understood. This night was no longer about cattle or land, or even his own survival. It was about what kind of man he would choose to be. The ranch walls trembled with the sound of drums, and Ethan braced himself for dawn. The first gray light of dawn stretched across the desert when Ethan heard the horses. Hooves drummed against the earth, steady, certain. He stepped out onto the porch, rifle in hand, and felt the weight of the morning press down on him. Across the ridge, shadows emerged one by one. Apache riders, proud and silent, their ponies painted with white streaks that caught the weak light. Their faces were unreadable masks, their bows slung low, rifles gleaming. At their center rode a tall warrior with hawk-like eyes, his hair bound with red cloth. Tate cursed under his breath. Billings spat and muttered, "Told you they'd come." The riders halted 100 yards from the ranch house. The leader raised a hand. Ethan set his rifle aside and stepped forward. His boots sank into the dust. His shirt was stiff with dry blood, not his but the boys'. He wanted them to see it. The leader's voice carried sharp and cold. "You have our son." Ethan nodded once. "He lives." From the porch, Tate shouted, "Tell him to take him and be gone." But Ethan raised his hand to silence him. He walked closer until only 50 yards of dust stretched between him and the tribe. His voice was steady, though his heart hammered. "I shot him by mistake," he said, "but I saved him after. His blood's on my hands, but so is his breath." The riders stirred, muttering in Apache. Their eyes burned with fury, confusion. One young warrior lifted his rifle, but the leader stilled him with a gesture. The leader's gaze was like flint. "You speak of mercy, rancher, but why keep him? Why not return him?" Ethan swallowed. He thought of the boy's shallow breaths through the night, of Jacob's face flickering in his mind. Because he wouldn't have lived the ride, and because I owed him more than death. The silence stretched long. The warriors shifted uneasily, their ponies stamping at the sand. Then from the group, a woman dismounted. She was tall, her hair braided tight, eyes sharp as obsidian. She looked scarcely older than Ethan's lost son might have been had he grown, perhaps 20 summers at most. She stepped forward, speaking in Apache first, then broken English. "I am Tea. Sister to Kaya, the boy you shot. You claim he lives. I will see. Her words cut like a blade. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. He turned and led her inside. The ranch house smelled of smoke and blood. The boy lay pale but breathing, his chest rising in slow rhythm. Taya knelt beside him, touched his brow, and murmured softly in their tongue. The boy stirred faintly, his lips shaping her name. Taya rose, eyes flashing toward Ethan. He lives. She paused and added, for now. Outside, the leader called. Taya answered quickly in Apache, words rapid, heated. When she finished, the leader gave a curt nod. He and the riders turned their horses. They leave? Ethan asked, incredulous. Taya's gaze was sharp. Not peace. Only time. They will see if your mercy is truth or trick. Taya stayed. She sat by her brother's side, refusing food, refusing to sleep. Her presence turned the ranch house taut as a drawn bowstring. Tate grumbled constantly. Ain't safe, McGraw. She's a knife in the dark waiting to happen. Billings agreed, his voice edged with venom. One word from her, and they'll be on us like wolves. Ethan ignored them. He watched Taya instead. She moved like a hawk, silent, watchful, every muscle coiled. Yet when her hand brushed her brother's brow, her face softened, a glimpse of sorrow breaking through. Days stretched on. Kaya's wound began to close. He ate broth, spoke haltingly, his eyes following Ethan with something between mistrust and curiosity. Ethan tried words, gestures, but communication was scarce. Still, the boy lived. One night, under the orange glow of the hearth, Ethan found himself speaking to Taya, though she gave no sign. She cared to listen. I had a boy once, he said. Jacob. Fever took him. Wasn't much older than your brother. Taya's eyes flickered toward him, then away. She said nothing, but she didn't walk off either. The uneasy quiet broke on the fourth day. Rustlers came. It started with gunfire in the distance, then the lowing of cattle in panic. Ethan grabbed his rifle, sprinting for the barnyard. Tate and Billings followed, guns half ready. Through the dust, shapes moved fast. Outlaws, rough men with scarves over their faces, driving Ethan's cattle off. One raised a rifle and fired, splinters exploding from the barn post beside Ethan's head. Rustlers! Tate roared. The ranch exploded into chaos. Gunfire cracked. Cattle bawled, stampeding to the corral. Ethan fired, dropped one rider, then ducked as a bullet whined past. A shout rang behind him. Billings went down, clutching his shoulder. Tate cursed, firing wildly. Then a figure moved where Ethan least expected. Taya. She darted from the house, bow in hand, arrows flying swift and sure. One rustler toppled from his saddle with a scream. Another wheeled in panic. Ethan stared, stunned, then snapped back to firing. He caught a rustler in the chest, reloaded fast. Dust swirled, cattle surged. The yard turned into a storm of hooves and gunfire. One outlaw charged Ethan, pistol raised. Too close to fire, too quick to reload. Ethan braced, then a flash of steel. Taya lunged, knife in hand, plunging it into the outlaw's side. He fell gasping at her feet, breath ragged. Ethan nodded at her. No words, only understanding. They fought side by side until the last rustlers fled, leaving the yard littered with the groans of the wounded and the stench of gunpowder. Billings groaned where he lay, shoulder bleeding. Tate staggered, furious and shaken. Ethan leaned on his rifle, chest heaving. Taya stood tall, blood streaked on her knife, eyes blazing in the lamplight. Your enemies, she said flatly. Not ours. Ethan met her gaze. For the first time, he saw not just suspicion there, but a flicker of respect. Night fell heavy after the fight. The cattle were scattered. One ranch hand wounded, the ranch itself scarred. But Kaya lived, his fever breaking at last. He whispered in Apache, and Taya smiled faintly, her first since coming. Ethan sat outside, the desert cool on his skin, firelight flickering from a house. Taya stepped out, her eyes wary but softer than before. You saved him, Ethan said quietly. Back there, you could have let that outlaw finish me. Why didn't you? Taya's jaw tightened. She looked to the horizon before answering. Because you saved my brother. Mercy is not weakness. My father taught me that before your people killed him. The words struck deep. Ethan looked down, guilt a weight on his chest. Then maybe I owed it. Silence stretched. The desert seemed to listen. Then Taya spoke again. The council will decide your fate. They do not trust you. Some say your mercy hides a trap. What do you say? Ethan asked. She studied him long before answering. I say a man can choose to be more than his people, but the council must see for themselves. You must come with my brother. Only then will they believe. Ethan felt the earth tilt beneath him. To ride into an Apache camp unarmed was near suicide. Yet what choice did he have? Inside, Kaya stirred again, calling faintly in his tongue. Ethan stepped back to the doorway, watching the boy's frail body, his fragile breaths. Billings barked from his cot, bitterness thick in his voice. Don't do it, McGraw. Ride into their camp. You're a dead man. Tate added, Ain't no white man walks out of an Apache council alive. But Ethan knew he had crossed the line the moment his bullet struck the boy. His only road forward lay through mercy, not away from it. He saddled his horse at dusk. The air was sharp, carrying the distant scent of smoke. Taya mounted her own pony, Kaya bundled weak but alive before her. Ethan carried no rifle this time, no pistol, only the weight of what he'd chosen. As they rode into the deepening twilight, the desert swallowed them. Shadows stretched long, and the first torches of the Apache camp flickered ahead like stars fallen to earth. Ethan straightened in the saddle, heart pounding. If they believed him, he might live. If not, the desert would claim him by sunrise. The drums began to beat again, slow and steady. Taya rode beside him, silent, her gaze fixed on the fire-lit horizon. Kaya stirred faintly in her arms, whispering a single word Ethan didn't understand, but he felt its meaning all the same. And with that, Ethan rode into the dark, carrying mercy like a shield that might not save him. The storm had passed in the night, leaving the desert still and brittle. Sunlight crept over the horizon in shards of gold, glinting against wet stones and tracing silver veins along the swollen creek. John Carver stood at the edge of his camp, boots pressed into mud that had hardened overnight, watching as the boys stirred under canvas. The boy's arm was bound tight, the wound stitched and sealed by John's clumsy but careful hands. Each time he looked at it, he thought of the gunshot, how quick, how careless. He replayed the sound, the boy's body crumpling, the shock on that young Apache face. And yet, here the boy breathed. Here he lived. John had not expected mercy to change him, but it had. The moment he chose to save instead of finish what others might have called justice, something inside him broke open. He no longer saw the boy as a threat. He saw him as a burden he had willingly chosen to carry, and maybe, just maybe, as his only chance at redemption. The quiet of morning shattered when a figure appeared on the ridge above. A horseman. He sat tall in the saddle, framed by the rising sun, his lance tipped with feathers that shivered in the breeze. John stiffened. Apache. The boy opened his eyes then, groggy but alert. When he saw the rider, his lips pressed into a hard line. He pushed himself up, despite the pain, and whispered something John could not understand. It was a single word, repeated twice, strained and urgent. Then the rider raised his hand, not in greeting but in a signal. Behind him, as though summoned by the earth itself, dozens of Apache emerged over the ridge, mounted, armed, faces painted with ochre and ash. They flowed down the slope like a tide. John's heart slammed. He reached for his rifle, then stopped. To fight here was suicide. To run was folly. The boy stumbled his feet, clutching at his chest where the bandages lay. He stepped between John and the gathering riders, his small frame standing against the inevitable. The lead horseman reined in before them, a powerful man with scars carved deep into his cheeks, his eyes cold fire. His gaze moved from the boy to John, and he said something in Apache. The boy answered, voice trembling but steady. John caught only one word repeated again. Shash. Bear. It was what the boy had called him before, half insult, half name. Now it seemed to mean more. The leader studied John with a hawk's patience. His warriors fanned out, circling, bows raised but not loosed. A single breath could have turned the world into blood. Then the boy did something John never expected. He stepped closer to John, touched his chest with a weak hand, and spoke fiercely in his own tongue. Whatever he said, it cracked the tension like lightning. The leader's gaze softened. He lowered his lance. The circle of riders eased. For the first time since the gunshot, John felt the rope around his neck slacken. But it was not forgiveness. It was a test. The leader pointed with the lance toward the mountains. His meaning was clear. John would ride with them. He would face judgment not here, but among the people. John's jaw clenched. He had no choice but to nod. He glanced at the boy, who looked back with hollow, fevered eyes. Between them passed an unspoken truth. They were bound together now, by blood and mercy both. The journey into the mountains was silent but heavy. John rode a borrowed pony. The boy slumped against him, weak from fever. The Apache warriors flanked him on all sides, a living wall of suspicion. Every clink of tack, every hoofbeat on stone echoed like judgment. By dusk, they reached the camp. Hidden among pines and cliffs, it breathed with life. Fires burning low, children darting like shadows, women grinding maize, old men sharpening arrowheads. When John was dragged from the saddle, every eye followed. The air was thick with anger. They brought him before the council fire. At its head sat the scarred leader, flanked by elders whose hair shone silver in the flames. The boy was placed beside them, wrapped in furs, his face pale but unflinching. The trial began not with words, but with silence. The people studied John as though weighing his very soul. Then the accusations came, spoken in a tongue John could not follow, sharp and fierce. The boy's name was repeated again and again. Finally, the leader rose, his lance planted in the earth, and spoke directly to John in halting English. "You shot him." John swallowed. "Yes." "You save him." A beat of silence. John's jaw tightened. "Yes." The fire cracked, sending sparks spiraling into the night. The leader's eyes narrowed. "Why?" John's mouth went dry. He could have said survival. He could have said fear. But the truth dug deeper than either. "Because I couldn't let him die," he said. "Not by my hand. Not when I had a choice." The words fell heavy into the fire's glow. Murmurs rippled to the gathered tribe. Some nodded, others scowled. Mercy was not weakness in their world, but it was not strength either. The boy spoke then, voice rough but clear. His words cut through the night like a blade. Whatever he said struck the elders, for their faces shifted, curiosity, disbelief, even a spark of respect. The leader raised a hand. Silence fell. He stepped closer to John, so close their breaths mingled in the cold air. "You bear shame. You bear guilt. But you choose mercy. That is rare." His voice hardened. "The boy lives. Because of you. For that we do not kill you." Relief washed through John, but it was short-lived. The leader pointed beyond the fire, toward the darkness of the cliffs. "But to be free, you must prove. Tomorrow the trial." John's heart lurched. Trial? He glanced at the boy, who met his eyes, steady despite his pain. The boy knew what it meant. A test of strength, of spirit, a gauntlet no outsider had ever survived. That night, John lay bound near the fire, the murmurs of the tribe echoing around him. The boy, though weak, found his way to John's side. He sat, leaning against him, whispering words John could not understand. But the tone was clear. It was not comfort. It was warning. By dawn, the trial awaited, and in it, John Carver's soul would be laid bare. The sun rose red, spilling fire over the mountains. The tribe gathered in a circle at the cliff's edge, drums beating a low, steady rhythm. John was led to the center, stripped of weapons, stripped of pride. The boy watched in the circle, his face pale but his eyes fierce. The leader stepped forward. "Today you prove, not with words, with strength, with heart." From the crowd emerged 3 warriors, chosen for the trial. Each carried a weapon, spear, club, bow. Each wore the paint of war. The circle tightened. The drums thundered. John's pulse matched their beat. The first warrior lunged. John ducked, the spear slicing air where his chest had been. Instinct took over. He grabbed the shaft, wrenched it free, and slammed the man to the ground. Gasps rose, but John did not strike. He cast the spear aside, hands open. Mercy again. The second came harder. Swinging the club, it cracked against John's ribs, driving the air from his lungs. He staggered, saw red, but stood. When the warrior raised the club for the final blow, John caught his wrist, twisted, and shoved him back. The man fell hard. John stepped away. No killing blow. The third warrior raised his bow. Arrow aimed at John's heart. Time slowed. The boy shouted something, voice sharp with urgency. The warrior hesitated. In that heartbeat, John spread his arms wide, unflinching. "If I must die," he said, voice hoarse but strong, "then let it be here, but not by my own hand. I won't kill to prove I deserve to live." The arrow trembled. Then the warrior lowered it. Silence swallowed the circle. The leader stepped forward, studying John as though seeing him for the first time. "You bear mercy, even in trial." The drum stopped. The tribe watched, breath held. The leader raised his lance high, then drove it into the earth. "Then you are not enemy. You are brother." The crowd erupted, not in anger, but in thunderous approval. The boy's eyes brimmed, pride and relief mingling. John, battered and broken, felt something ignite in his chest. Not victory, not survival. Something more. Belonging.